Welcome to the In Shape Fitness Show. I'm Coach Kim, and today I am talking to you about why you don't need big money fitness, big gyms, and heavy equipment, exercise regimens that require you to buy memberships, but rather give you freedom from all of those things. And I'm sparked today by the big news in the media today, which is that there is, I guess suddenly people are aware that two big gyms, one is Equinox, the other is SoulCycle, but they're actually owned by the same company. It's a real estate company, which I think is a strange thing. And I found out I'm New York City based, as you probably know, and Related is a big real estate company that is, owns apartment buildings in Manhattan and in other boroughs of New York City, but in New York City. And so it's just this huge conglomerate, and they built these monster complexes of really luxurious and beautiful buildings. But several years back, they diversified their company's holdings by purchasing the majority stake of a big gym called Equinox. And Equinox is a great gym by all measures in terms of consumer fitness. It offers really lovely facilities. They're comfortable. They are run by staff members that are committed to their craft, committed to their customers. And then a smaller company called SoulCycle, which is a spin company that got started in New York City and was bought by Equinox several years later, is now part of that portfolio as well. So the reason I'm talking about these companies today is because it was just in the news this yesterday evening and this morning that a huge political fundraiser is going on in Long Island, in the Hamptons, by the owner of this big company Related, which in turn owns these big gym companies, for our president of the United States, and to the tune of $250,000, I guess, a plate. I don't even understand that concept of money in many ways. It's way too much money for me to comprehend how much they're raising. But the man that is hosting this fundraiser is a man named Stephen Ross, and he is the predominant owner of this big real estate firm, which of course, big money, big politics, and then just as a function of that, big fitness got me thinking about how amazingly paradoxical it is that people, even very progressive and liberal, thoughtful people that take good care of themselves, spend just an inordinate amount of money and energy and time taking care of their bodies because they haven't taken the time to understand fundamentals that would prevent you from having to do that. The industry is so consumer experience based. Fitness is so mired in this sort of fundamental idea that you need to purchase your solution rather than understand the basics of taking care of your body without having to go to such a space, to leave your home and go out to find health in the form of a gym-based workout, in the form of a spin cycle, experience, or a yoga class. I wrote a book. I haven't had it published yet. If you're a publisher or you're an editor or you're anywhere connected to the industry, I'm actually still looking for a publisher for the book that I wrote, and still I'm kind of editing myself, called Darwin on the Treadmill, which is a nonfiction book, not sort of to tell you how to exercise, but to write about ways that you can understand the fundamental basis of health without the exercise regimen that we've come to know and just sort of take as a given, which is that you got to go to the gym to work out. You got to have weights in order to get a good workout. You got to, try to shred your abs and have these six packs in order for you to sustain functional health. And the truth is that these are all lies built around the idea of these big companies that want you to spend monthly money to come to their facilities and to exercise at the hands of people that are definitely smart and knowledgeable and committed. As I said about the Equinox trainers, they are committed to the work that they do. But the bottom line is regular people just don't need it. I haven't exercised in a gym for more than a decade. I stopped exercising in a gym when I got pregnant with my daughter, and haven't been back. I haven't looked back, not once. I get up and I exercise. I talked about this last week, actually, 3 types of exercise regimens. They are tried and true in terms of sort of doing all the things that need to be done. One I call the functional 5, or the morning regimen, that I do every single day. I adhere mostly to a Tibetan form that we call the Tibetan rites. For the most part, that's the exercise regimen that I perform every single morning. I've talked non-stop about the 5 Tibetan rites over the last several years, and I write about them in my book as well. Sort of really simple exercises that I do every single morning. Maintenance routines and chamber fitness, which is a 20-minute routine that I actually just recorded on our other podcast channel the other day, is sort of a tongue-in-cheek term that I refer to as maintenance routines, exercises that you need to do a couple times a week in order to, typically it's to maintain your ability to do other things, like your ability to, participate in a particular recreational activity, playing tennis or golfing or going for jogs or maybe kicking around a soccer ball with your kid. And then there are anchor workouts, which serve 2 purposes. One is to give you that sustained level of elevated exercise, sort of endurance and exercise commitment. So something that lasts about an hour, potentially a little bit longer. But it also serves the purpose of teaching you fundamentals that you can use in the other 2 types of routines, which you need to adhere to on a more regular basis. So 1 anchor workout a week, totally serviceable. 2, a slightly better. But there are routines that you absolutely, again, don't need a gym for, but if you're going to choose a group fitness or some sort of exercise regimen that you do in an outside facility, it would be that one, so that you can learn and so that you can sustain your activity level over a longer period of time. And I write about these in my book. And then the more important thing that I do in my book is to define the difference between sort of the notion that you need to burn calories, and not that you don't, but of course, sort of we tend to think about things in terms of understandings that we have on an everyday basis. So if you have good health habits, you have a sort of a lower threshold for maybe potentially for the amount of activity that you need to spend, the amount of time that you need to dedicate to kind of an exercise regimen, and the intensity of that exercise regimen. But because Americans don't take very good care of their bodies nutritionally, or from a food perspective, each person has to weigh out how their understanding of exercise resonates to practical decisions that they make every day. And that's why having something every single day is also important. When you wake up every single day, and do several things, right? You wake up every single day and you get dressed. You wake up every single day and you make your bed. Hopefully. There was an article not too long ago about the significance of people that make their beds versus people that don't make their beds. So if you think that's silly, take a look at this, Google that. It is significant. There are things that you do every single day. You brush your teeth every single day. You perform some level of hygiene every single day. Your commitment to activating your physical body is something that you can do every single day, and it makes a huge difference. It makes you aware of your body. It activates your metabolism, turns your, thrusts the engines on, if you will, flips those switches to get oxygenated blood flowing to your limbs. You have thousands upon thousands of miles of capillaries that are the source of nutritional exchange, blood flow, and nutritional exchange, really, really vital to your ability to function physically. And capillaries don't have free-flowing fluid, blood, unless they are the limbs, the parts of the body are actually moving. So if, for example, you think about how you might feel some tightness as you get a little bit older, as you wake up, you feel kind of like stiff in your legs, maybe your neck, maybe your fingers and hands. That's because you're sedentary when you sleep, and the fluid, the blood in your body and fluids in your body settle. And when you wake up, you're not active yet. So by doing a short routine, and again, I choose 5 exercises, and that's it. 5 moves, 5 squats, or the 5 exercises could include squats, jumping jacks, push-ups, a plank, hip bridges. That's a really simple a group of 5 right there. So what did I say? Squats, jumping jacks, push-ups, a plank, and hip bridges. That's it. Squats, jumping jacks, push-ups, a plank, and hip bridges. 5 exercises, about a minute each. That's 5 minutes of time that you don't need to go to anyone to get help. Maybe you're not doing them absolutely correct. You can contact me if you want some specific instructions, some descriptions of the things that you need to do in order to do them correctly. But they get it out of the way. You'll get your heart rate up a little bit. You'll tire yourself a little bit. But at the end of that 5 minutes of time, you are going to feel great, and you are going to take stock in the significance of the energy level that you feel, the difference that you feel, and the ability for you to function through your morning without that burden of thinking, wow, I got to get to lunch. I got to eat at my desk so that I can get out of work on time, so that I can go to the gym on time, so that I can get home for dinner on time and watch my favorite show or go out with my friends. Like it's a no-win situation, not a sustainable solution to think that going to the gym is the solution to your health maintenance issues and concerns. So with this news that 2 of the biggest fitness companies, and just think for a second about the fact that we spend as a country $30 billion every year on gym memberships alone. That's just gym memberships alone. That doesn't count all the extra stuff that we spend money on, all of the, sort of fancy equipment, the stuff that we keep in our homes, the shoes and the athletic gear so that we look good when we go to the gym, all that stuff. Just $30 billion of gym memberships. And guess what? Most people don't even go to the gym when they spend that money. So we are lining the pockets of these wealthy billionaires, and we're not even getting our end of the bargain at the end of the day. So Darwin on the Treadmill, the book that I wrote, defines our company's perspective on the way that you attack your health, the way that you sustain a functional health plateau, right? So not necessarily the thinnest person in the room, the most beautiful bikini body, the shredded abs or the pumped up biceps, but functional health, your ability to do what you want to do in your life. 8 key principles or sort of priorities of health. 1 is simply balance. Balance is vital to your overall ability to do absolutely everything that you want to do in your life. And that includes your ability to get through your workday without pain, without medications. Pain and medications are going to drive our country further into debt. And the way that you get through your life without having this commitment, having this sort of shackle to your pocketbook, is by understanding what balance actually is, how the vertical line that needs to run down the center of your down the side center of your body, through the top of your head, down through your ears, through your shoulders, your hips, your knees, and your ankles, and how the sort of negative alterations, the negative deviations from proper posture are causing your center of gravity to shift, and therefore different strains and contractions that are settling into your non-moving body that cause the pain and suffering that lead to medications and lead to you're not wanting to do or having the energy to do the things that you want to do in your life. So a couple of the two major things that happen, and there are two major things that have happened to our sedentary bodies. One is a crane of the head forward. It is a deviation of proper posture and a deviation from your center of gravity that's correct, that causes significant problems that take place slowly over time, so you don't realize them necessarily when you're in your 20s or even necessarily when you're in your 30s. But as you get older, by looking far forward, over time, by looking down at your devices, by craning your head to sort of drive a car or to type on a keyboard, and your head moves forward so that your ears are forward, in a forward position in relation to your shoulders. You are pulling on the back of your neck, and you're collapsing at your throat and through your chest. Now, I'm doing those two things at this very moment while I speak. I am literally hunched over kind of a microphone, and I'm using the keyboard at this console to deliver this podcast to you. So I'm actually deviating from my own proper posture as I'm doing this activity myself. But as I correct myself, which as you learn to be more aware, you become you have the skills to make the adjustments that you need to make to correct yourself on a regular basis. And then all of a sudden you realize, wow, I really do have proper posture. It does take some time. It could take more than a year if you have developed this head forward deviation from proper posture. But the other thing that it does, and not just I said there were two things. So one is the pull on the neck muscles in the back, and the collapse of your chest and your throat, which have implications. There are consequences to those consequences. There are consequences related to the way that you breathe because your airway is blocked. There are consequences to the pull on the back of your neck in terms of your chest being able to open properly for you to breathe, and for your upper body to function properly in terms of movements in your life. But the second thing that it does is that it alters your center of gravity. Your head is this heavy piece of equipment. It weighs like 10 pounds. And if you take for a moment, this is a really good reason to actually go into a gym or pick up that useless medicine ball that you now use as a door stopper, which is what I use for medicine balls for in my apartment in New York City. If you pick up a 10-pound medicine ball and you try to hold it for more than a minute, it's going to really fatigue you. But that's what you're doing with your head all day. So if your head is not in the right place, if you're not properly utilizing the unbelievably sophisticated tension of tensegrity, actually, right? So it's the tension and contraction and suspension of this weighty piece of equipment on your spindly neck. And if that is off, your center of gravity is therefore off. Your ability to ambulate and to manage the space that you take up as a human person is going to be altered as well. So balance is really, really, really important. I said there were also two things that happen. One was the position of your head and the consequences of that. The second is the position of your pelvis and the consequences of that. I want to get through those other 7 things. It sounds like I might actually need to do this in a couple of parts because I don't want to go past 30 minutes. But I do want to talk about the position of your pelvis because you've probably heard of something called lordosis. The position of your pelvis should be pretty much straight up and down. But when your pelvis begins to tilt forward as a result of your sitting all the time. You end up with this tilt, and the tilt causes a contraction of your lower back and a pull of your hips on the front, leading into the connection through the lower part of your back. So the erector spinae muscle, which is the lower back muscle, has that sort of persistent contraction by sitting all day. And then you're pulling on your hip flexors and causing tightness and weakness through the front tummy, lower tummy muscles, as well as the hip flexors. And that has other lots of implications for your mobile life, whether it goes, it comes in the shape of you're just wanting to be in shape more, wanting to go to the gym and actually take control of your health, or not go to the gym, as it were, as I like to influence you to do now, and do this in your home. One of the reasons why hip bridges are so important every single day. But if you are, potentially wanting to bucket list something like a half marathon or a marathon, if you, and I know this very well because I've for 9 years actually, have worked as a marathon coach for the New York City Roadrunners and the New York City Marathon. And the charity runners that I see every single year are almost always bucket list marathoners that are working most of the time, and they're hoping to get through a 26.2 mile experience. But one of the main things that they have to get over is the sort of the deviations of the posture, which relate to one's balance, and therefore the implications for that in terms of the way that their body moves. So running is a great exercise. It's one of my favorite things to do, but it certainly can be hindered, and it can cause problems for people that are not able to improve their sort of non-moving state as well. All right, so I want to move on to range of motion. I call it bending because I'm not into yoga as a discipline. Just can't handle the sort of components related to a lot of the spiritual issues. Like, quite frankly, I'm much more of a moving person, like kind of quick, fast twitch kind of a brain thinking kind of person. And yoga doesn't really appeal to me from that perspective as an experience. However, from a functional perspective, being able to move all of your joints, particularly related to your core, your back, your hips, your hamstrings, and then the range of motion through your head and your fingers, toes, wrists, and ankles are super, super important. So I write a whole section about the significance of bending and different ways that bending can be incorporated into exercise regimens. In fact, the most recent chamber fitness regimen that I did has you stretching out the IT band at the end of a segment where you're performing a couple of hip exercises. And so you're working the hips, you're actually exercising or activating the butt and the hamstrings, but then following that immediately with rotation through your torso that allows you to stretch out the IT band, something that's really, really critical in sort of the overall concept of moving around, being able to move around without pain and suffering, without medications and without a lot of medical attention. The third component is a concept that I call pivoting. And I talk a lot about left-handed versus right-handedness and dominant leg versus weaker leg issues with my runners. And I write a whole section about pivoting, the idea of maintaining a level of strength on the right leg and the left leg, which is so important. It's so undervalued, even in my sort of small vertical space of running coaching. Most coaches don't really focus on how important it is to dedicate the amount of time that you need to dedicate to make sure that your weaker leg, and for most people that means your left leg, is strong enough to actively participate, to pull its own weight, if you will, when you're actively involved in a particular activity. Interacting with gravity is the fourth area of focus that we deal with. So moving the body down and up is something that is really, really critical in terms of your ability to again, do simple things related to your existence on this planet. Being able to get down to the ground and pick something up properly without hurting yourself, but with potentially benefiting your body is something that we simply do not value. So obviously there are things that the usual suspects of squats and things like burpees push-ups are technically categorized, partly at least, as an exercise that interacts with gravity. But we have created this sort of quasi anti-gravity condition in our sedentary lives. And I write in my book about a NASA life science director that has dedicated her entire post-NASA career on this very issue. So you should check that out as well. The notion of plyometrics is an element that I write about in the book. I just call it jumping. It's pretty simple. The ability to maintain the neural part of your muscular life. It's neuromuscular system because embedded within all of the hundreds of muscles that you have in your body and your organs are neurons. And because your neurons terminate at the tips of in your feet and the tips of your toes, and because you do so little with most people, that is, not you personally, but most people do so little with their bodies in terms of movement, the dormancy of the tips of those neurons it has great effect to your ability to function. So if you add plyometrics into your exercise regimens, why almost always, I mentioned jumping jacks. I mean, they're not sexy. This is not fancy stuff here, but it's basic. It's tried and true. It might be old fashioned, but do them. There is no shame in getting out of bed and doing 50 jumping jacks every morning. Super, super effective. So jumping is one of them. Interacting with your sides, lateral movements is another really, really undervalued component of your exercise life. And it is something that I talk about ad nauseum with my runners, because the thing about marathon runners in particular is that once you start to fatigue during an activity, so it could be running, it could be hiking or biking or swimming or whatever, the supplement muscles, the smaller ancillary muscles, become that much more important. And for your legs, it just as we're talking about, ambulation, whether it's running or biking or whatever, those inner thigh muscles and the outer thigh muscles, your gluteus medius as well, all of those muscles, they reside on the side of the body, and they are some of the smaller muscles that get tired first. And because they don't have as much active muscular tissue, they're not getting the attention with the oxygenated blood flow that your body is generating within an activity. As a result of that, those are the muscles that fatigue first, and then they're the muscles that break down first and cause injury first. So interacting with the side of the body, exercises that are things like clamshells on the floor, lateral lunges, lateral shuffles, side planks. Those are all really, really important. The last thing that I want to mention to you, and as I said, I really do need to do a second part of this podcast probably, but we'll be probably talking, considering how much I'm seeing on social media today, about this big company fundraiser for the President of the United States in the Hamptons at literally per person $250,000, and how Equinox and SoulCycle are seeing so much blowback in their membership base. It'll be really interesting to see if there's a tipping point with the way people approach their exercise regimens, and I'd love to be a part of that. The last thing that I talk about is something that I simply call PPHC, and the reason that I call it that is because modern life, we don't have a ton of manual labor in our lives. Most people don't do a lot of upper body lift unless you're lifting weights in an exercise form. And I'm not a big believer in that. As I said before, it is my belief that you do not need a gym, period. You do not need a gym, period. However, you do need to be able to do things. I have, and I write about this in my book because I'm really proud of this fact, I have a non-motorized, literally non-motorized lawnmower in this tiny little, it's not a very big patch of grass, mind you. Mowing lawns is just whole sort of other consumer issue about lawnmowers that I find really fascinating in our modern world, and how much machinery and the ease, that sort of idea of industry making human life easier is part of the problem that we have in terms of being so unhealthy now. So I have this non-motorized lawnmower, and it takes a great deal of effort to mow my small lawn in my family's home in Virginia, where I spend time, where I am now actually, because it's serious effort to push this thing. So PPHC is basically comprised of all sort of ideas of activity around pushing, pulling, carrying, and holding. And it really is actual core work. So all of the exercises, and the exercises that I classify in our giant database, our company's database of exercises, every exercise gets classified by at least one, if not two, functional priorities. So the ones that I've mentioned here to you today: bending, balance, pivoting, jumping, etc. PPHC being one of them as well, is all the exercises that relate to planks, versions of planks. Push-ups is a primary PPHC exercise in my database, though, as I said to you earlier, I also incorporates the interaction with gravity from your body. So, but PPHC is the concept that I use whenever I do work with clients that relates to back and front core stability, butt strength, and lower core and the side of your body to a certain degree. So exercises that juice up your tummy muscles and stabilize your back are all part and parcel. And if you are interested in giving the non-motorized lawn mowing experience a try, let me know. I will be happy to give you some tips. So I'm Coach Kim from In Shape Fitness. I'm going to say goodbye now because I'm way over my 30-minute sort of standard here, but I want to let you know I'll be talking about this more in the coming in the next episode of the In Shape Fitness Show. And if you have any questions, let me know. Let me and my team know. We're in New York City, but I'm in Virginia for the summer, but still, of course, connected and happy to help you devise a gym-free exercise regimen that you can get through and save those monies in the process. Have a great day.